Imagine coming home, opening your front door, and whoosh, hearing the sound of rushing water. We're not talking about a slow, annoying drip here. We are talking about water violently pouring into your apartment, literally destroying your possessions and turning your safe haven into a complete disaster zone in a matter of minutes. Well, that is exactly what happened to Margaret. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the anatomy of a totally routine disaster. We're going to look at that fierce, almost ruthless hunt for whoever is to blame when things go horribly wrong in our homes. Plus, we'll expose some of the hidden realities of how property management actually works behind the scenes. So, let's dive right in. Let's stick with the human story for a second. Margaret's life was completely turned upside down in an instant. And the culprit? An aging hot water pipe that just violently burst inside her walls. She was left standing there in the absolute wreckage, facing massive structural damage to her home. And get this, through absolutely no fault of her own. Now, the physical damage to her apartment came with a shockingly precise price tag: €945 and 6 cents. To get the immediate repairs moving, that exact amount was quickly paid out to her. But as you might guess, that initial payout, it was really just the starting gun for a massive legal battle. Enter the insurance company. They stepped in, did their job, and paid Margaret's claim so she could actually start fixing her home. But look, insurance companies don't just walk away from a financial loss if they don't have to, right? They immediately launched an investigative mission to find whoever was at fault. They legally stepped into Margaret's shoes to go get their money back. And their crosshairs? They locked onto a very specific target really fast: the property management company. You know, the entity officially hired to maintain the building's shared infrastructure. The insurance company's logic was super simple here. They figured the manager should have just fixed those aging pipes before they ever broke. Makes sense on the surface, right? So the insurance company goes on the offensive. And I mean heavy, aggressive accusations. They claimed the management company completely ignored basic maintenance. They argued that the manager failed to perform standard visual checks, basically acting with an unjustifiable negligence that directly led to this pipe bursting. The court did not focus on emotion. It asked one key legal question: did the property manager legally fail in their duty to prevent this damage? That is the single, simple sentence this entire case hinged on. You see, the court just needed to know if the manager actually neglected their required duties, which is what would make them legally responsible for the broken pipe. Okay, so the crucial point here is understanding how liability actually works. In the eyes of the law, the insurance company can't just walk into court and say, "Hey, a pipe broke, someone else has to pay." No way. They have to prove a literal chain of events. They have to identify the damage, prove the manager's wrongful inaction actually caused it, and only then can they successfully transfer that financial liability. And this brilliantly illustrates where cases like this are won and lost: the paperwork. The insurance company built their whole case on the assumption that no inspections were being done at all. But when the court looked at the hard facts, that assumption completely fell apart against the documented reality. The property manager produced their logs, and boom, they proved they actually did their job perfectly. They completed the legally required visual inspections of the building twice a year, once in May and once in October. And during those really thorough walkthroughs, they found absolutely zero visible leaks. The court looked at this and recognized a really hard truth about infrastructure. A standard visual check simply cannot predict when an old, hidden pipe buried deep behind a wall is finally going to burst. I mean, you just cannot legally hold someone accountable for failing to predict the unpredictable. It's impossible. But wait, this leads us to the ultimate, obvious question. If everybody knew the building was old and they knew the pipes were way past their average lifespan, why didn't the property manager just replace them before disaster struck? Well, the answer lies in how shared property actually functions in the real world. A property manager can inspect, they can organize, they can suggest repairs all day long, but they don't hold the wallet. The property owners, the collective group of residents, are literally the only ones who have the power to authorize and fund those major projects. And here is the absolute smoking gun of the case. The hidden evidence was a maintenance document from over a decade earlier. It showed that the property manager had explicitly warned the building owners about these exact old pipes. They mapped out a plan, set a deadline to approve replacement funding, and practically begs the owners to take action to avoid a disaster. And what do you think happened? The owners of the building, which, by the way, includes Margaret's own household collective, met that warning with total silence. Crickets. They never held the vote, and they completely failed to approve the money needed for the massive repair project. Because the necessary funding was denied, the property manager did the only thing they could do to protect themselves. They put it in writing. They formally stated that they would absolutely not take the blame or assume responsibility for any consequences stemming from the aging infrastructure that the owners themselves refused to fix. So, the legal reality presented to the court was super stark. The property manager did absolutely everything they were legally required to do. They inspected, they reported, and they warned. The owners, on the other hand, they completely ignored their own fundamental responsibility to fund the upkeep of their own building. With all the evidence laid out, the timeline established, and the responsibilities clearly defined, the court had to make a final decision. So, who is actually left holding the bill? Who would ultimately absorb the financial hit for Margaret's ruined apartment? The court ruled decisively. The property manager was not at fault. They acted correctly, they followed the law, and they simply lacked the authority to magically fix a building with a $0 budget. The lawsuit against them was dismissed entirely. Which means the insurance company completely failed to prove any negligence. And because they couldn't find a legally responsible party to pass the buck to, they were forced to just eat the cost of the payout themselves, absorbing the loss and covering all the court fees. And this brings us to our final takeaway, a much broader truth about how the law actually works in real life. True responsibility lies with those who actually control the funding, not just those who manage the property. You simply cannot legally blame someone for failing to fix a problem when you flat out refuse to give them the money to fix it. So think about your own home or building for a second. When push comes to shove, who really holds the purse strings in your community? One decision changed everything. Watch the next case right here and subscribe for more real stories.